If you are familiar with the competitive scene in Age of Empires, it's very likely you've come across the term Drush. For those of you that aren't familiar, Drush refers to Dark Age Rush. This is a strategy where you make military in the Dark Age and try to disrupt your opponent early while securing your own base and economy. Over the last few years, drushing has fallen out of the meta and is not really considered viable. There are a few reasons for this, but one of the biggest factors is that as players have developed faster and faster builds, drushing was just too slow. I am about to share with you one of the fastest drush builds in the entire game, and personally my favourite build order, the Lithuanian Insta Drush. The goal of this build is to build a barracks the moment the game starts. We then immediately train 2 militia and send them all the way across the map to disrupt the opponent. We do all of this while managing our way up to the Feudal Age at a reasonable time, ideally with 0 seconds of idle time. So let's jump right into it. The first thing we want to do is use the 2 villagers closest to each other to build a house, and use the single villager to build a barracks. Shift Q one of the house villagers and the barracks villager to start eating the sheep under the town centre. Shift Q the other house villager to the closest straggler tree to them. I know that seems strange, but I've done a lot of playing around with these starting villagers. If we send both house villagers to sheep, we won't have enough wood for our first house. And if we send them both to wood, we don't have enough food for our 7th villager. This is the way that I have found to keep everything operating smoothly. Villagers 4 and 5 also go to sheep underneath the town centre, while villager 6 goes out and joins the lone woodchopper on straggler trees. We also need to remember to queue our militia once the barracks has been completed. Villager 7 goes to sheep, and then we queue up Loom. Just before the 7th villager is created, force drop the wood villagers and build a house. The house should finish building just as Loom is finished researching. It is also important that we are scouting our base as much as possible. This build requires a lot of food, so it is critical that we find all of our sheep, boars and deer. Send villager 8 to sheep, giving us a total of 6 villagers under the TC. At this point, our militia should be on the field and ready to go cause some damage. If you still haven't found your deer or some of your sheep, and your militia are just standing there, I think it is worthwhile sending your militia out to at least the middle of the map, and leave your scout at home to scout your base for just a little bit longer. Your scout can catch up, and doing this build without all of that res available can be tricky. Send out villager number 9 to lure in the first boar. We should also be close to having enough wood to construct our 3rd house. When you have the resources to do so, use the villagers from the straggler trees. Our food income is a lot steadier now, and we're going to need wood for our 2nd feudal building soon. Send villager 10 to join the lumberjacks out on straggler trees. Don't worry too much if you don't have the time to execute a perfect boar lure with the TC trick. This build requires your focus to be split, actively swapping to and from your drush. Trying to manage your own eco while looking to find damage isn't easy, especially when you're worried about walking into an enemy town centre. From here, things get a little simpler at home, and we should be able to pay more attention to our forward pressure. Villager 11 goes to food underneath the town centre, and Villager 12 goes to lure in the 2nd boar. If the map has generated elephants or rhinos, you can hold off to Villager 13 if you would like instead. Every villager we train between now and the Feudal Age is going to go to food underneath the TC. We're going to train a total of 21 villagers, so don't forget to construct our 4th and final house. At this point, you might be wondering why I was stressing about finding all of our resources if we weren't going to be pushing in our deer, especially in today's meta where deer pushing is seen by many as a must. We're going to do something a little bit old school. Once we finish eating our first boar, send 4 villagers from the TC out to mill the deer. Thanks to our straggler choppers, you should have just enough wood. If you are worried about pressure from the enemy, I've found through executing this build many times that we can afford to take this risk if we keep the drush alive and keep being annoying. We are going to have a lot of villagers underneath our town centre, and you will realise fairly quickly that when a lot of villagers try to share a sheep, things get a little bumpy. I have found the best thing to do is to split the villagers evenly between 2 sheep. I have not done the exact spirit of the lore maths, but as long as you keep the spread even, you'll be on track to clicking up to feudal. That covers most of the Dark Age for this build. I'm gonna skip forward now to when we actually click up to the Feudal Age, so I can show how I like to transition this build into the next phase of the game. Okay, we have clicked up to the Feudal Age. The first thing we need to do when we click up is to grab 7 villagers from sheep and send them to build a lumber camp. So far, we have been prioritising food income to make sure that we could click up at a reasonable time, but now our focus needs to switch. We need to have enough wood in the bank that we can afford our next production building, a mill on the berries, another house, and double bit axe. I like to leave our 3 original lumberjacks on the straggler trees just to keep that wood income trickling in. Once our remaining sheep villagers finish their sheep business, send them to straggler trees as well. Once you have around 200 to 250 wood in the bank, take 4 of those straggler villages and send them to build a mill on the berries. As you're about to hit the Feudal Age, grab another 2 straggler villages and send them to build your military building. When they are done, send them to berries as well. I really think this build is suited towards stable play, but if your opponent has gone for a fast archer build, you can just as easily play skirms. Around this time, your deer villagers are likely finishing up their hunt. Send these villagers to the berries as well. We now have a lot of villagers taking berries, and just to really crowd them, I like to set the TC gather point here. Don't worry, we are going to keep them all here. By now, our wood economy should start to kick in. Pull villagers from the berries and onto farms as soon as you notice you have the wood to do so. Don't forget to get double bit axe here, it helps get that farm set up rolling. It might look chaotic at first, but provided the enemy doesn't get counter damage in, and you continue to add farms when you can, you will find yourself with a very solid economy. You'll be on your way to Castle Age before you know it. And there you have it. That is my build order for the Lithuanian Insta Drush. Like I said before, I haven't done a full Spirit of the Law analysis on this. This is just what I have found works for me through trial and error. It's likely, especially with the relatively new introduction of the force drop button, that this build can be done quicker. If you have a faster build or know of a pro player that has one, please let me know because I would love to try it. Regardless of how quickly you're able to get to the next stage, there are a few risks associated with this build. For example, when making your way across the map you could run into a lion. Or, maybe while luring in a boar, you walk into an enemy town centre. And maybe, without having any scouting at all of what's coming, they decide to research Loom. But don't let any of that dissuade you. This build is high risk, but it is also very high reward. It is a great way to throw off your opponent early, and it's just a lot of fun. Whether you use my build or make your own, I really hope to see a bit more instant drushing on the ranked ladder, and I really hope you give it a go. Thank you for watching.